What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and I'm going to be hitting you with a very different kind of video this time around. I'm actually hoping I can do some editing work in here that'll make it so this is more of a visual representation of what I'm talking about. We'll get to that eventually, but for sure, I wanted to put in a more lighthearted kind of video. I tend to get real heavy when I talk about some things, but one thing that's been on my mind since seeing Incredibles 2. If you're anything like me, you were probably also thinking about that line that Mr. Incredible says right near the end of the movie, talking about Jack's 17 powers. And after watching it a second time, I tried to figure out and actually observe what all 17 of those powers could possibly be. And I've also looked up some lists online. I found one that I think is pretty comprehensive of anything you could possibly conceive of, including one that I see no evidence for, so I'm going to discount it, but we'll get to that later. But really, depending on how you break it down, you could say Jack has as few as 9 powers, but also potentially as many as actually not 17, but 18. And we'll see if I can visually represent all those. If not, get ready for a whole lot of me doing all sorts of different hand gestures and things like that. And also a lot of me looking back and forth between the camera and my computer screen, which is immediately behind it. So, first off, the biggest thing when it comes to Jack's powers is described best by Edna, I would say, saying that he is a polymorph, meaning he can change his physical characteristics into other states. This includes he can transform into the monster form that he does when he's angry. He can make himself on fire. He also changes his size at one point. He turns to metal, which, to the best of my recollection, never happens in Incredibles 2, but it did happen in the first Incredibles movie, so you can definitely count that as part of his polymorphing. Also, there's the part where he first meets Edna, and he actually starts taking on the characteristics of Edna herself. This is often listed as mimicry. It's debatable whether or not that counts as part of the polymorphing, but if you really want to break it down into as few powers as possible, that fits under that description. And he also, at one point, does turn himself into this kind of rubbery substance that, at one point during the fight with the raccoon, helps him kind of be more durable. But it's not just that either. I don't know. It's weird, but basically he turns kind of rubbery. Another power of his that's shown quite frequently, it's often listed sometimes as two different things, and really it comes down to molecular vibration, if you want to sum it all up into one. Basically, he can pull a flash sort of thing and vibrate extremely fast in order to just like phase through stuff, in order to go through walls or some of the shields that Violet puts up, or just different things like that. He can phase through it by vibrating his molecules really fast, kind of like Flash would do. And then there's another that actually it's listed typically as 1. You almost might count it as 2, depending on how you're looking at it. He's really strong for a baby, lifting up all those lawn chairs and doing all that kind of crazy, like kicking a raccoon about 20 feet away and all that kind of stuff. Now, the way this is often listed is simultaneously superhuman strength and durability, which, you know, is kind of reasonable if you consider increased strength often means increased toughness. Like with Mr. Incredible, for example, he is really strong, but he can also take a lot of hits. So a lot of times those go hand in hand, but if you really want to be nitpicky and try to break down every single little possible detail of a power that he could have, I mean, strength doesn't always imply durability. Other things that are listed is wall crawling, which can also be related to his levitation power. You see throughout the movie, there are different moments where he floats. Sometimes just straight up regular floating, sometimes through a different dimension, but we'll get to that later. But his levitation could also just be the reason he has wall crawling abilities, because if you can levitate, you can make it look like you're Spider-Man and that kind of stuff, even though it's really you're just making yourself float. There's also the whole duplication thing, which there's really no way to count that as related to any of the others. Now, the teleportation is listed as one thing. I don't recall any instances of him just, like, between 1 second and another appearing in 2 totally different spots. A lot of times, it seems like the teleportation is related to the supposed dimensional travel that he has. Throughout the movie, they talk about how he can go into a different dimension where you can still hear Jack, but not see him. And, like, typically through the little scanner thing that they have for where he is and all that, it looks almost like he's just kind of floating around in this other dimension thing. And if you can't see him, that obviously gives it the appearance that he teleports from one spot to another. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't recall any instance of a very quick teleportation from one spot to another. But even if that's the case, you would figure dimensional travel is the reason for the teleportation. And the other ones are pretty easy to explain. He's got laser vision. You see that multiple times. He can basically create lightning. This is often listed as electrokinesis. And he also has telekinesis, meaning not only can he levitate himself, but he could also make other things levitate. But come to think of it, like the levitation could just be him using telekinesis on himself. So that might actually wrap 3 powers into one, if you count the wall crawling, the levitation, and the telekinesis all as one. So, to wrap it up, if you're trying to count his powers in as few as possible, you've got polymorphing, which includes all the monster, the flames, the size, the metal, all that. So you got polymorphing. You've got molecular vibration, which can also account for the phasing aspect. You've got superhuman strength and durability, which you can count simultaneously, I would argue, because you really rarely see one without the other. Especially, you rarely see strength without the durability. Superhuman senses, I saw no evidence for, so I'm discounting that entirely. The wall crawling could have been related to his levitation, which could also just be caused by his use of telekinesis on himself. Self-duplication is one that's not really related to any of the others. Teleportation, you could argue, is part of his dimensional travel ability. And then you've got the laser vision, telekinesis, and electrokinesis. So that's 9, at minimum. But if you break down each individual one, you can't count polymorphing as one if you're going to count the individual things he changes into, so that knocks one off the list. But if you want to go for as many as possible, you got monster form, self-combustion, size change, metal form, mimicry, turning into rubber. You got molecular vibration and phasing if you want to count those separately, superhuman strength, and durability if you want to count those separately, because it is possible to have durability without the strength, although it's difficult to have the strength without the durability. But anyway, we're counting it at 10 so far. Again, I'm disregarding superhuman senses because I don't recall any significant evidence of that. Wall crawling, assuming you separate that from some of the others that could be related to it, such as the telekinesis and the levitation. You've got self-duplication, teleportation, dimensional travel, assuming you count teleportation and dimensional travel separately. laser vision, electrokinesis, meaning, creating lightning, electricity stuff, and telekinesis. So that actually, depending on how you break it down, is as many as 19. 20 if you count the superhuman senses, which I discounted because I don't recall much evidence for it. I don't know what the heck Disney and Pixar were thinking here, but the whole 17 powers line, yes, it's possible to get to that number, but how did they arrive at that number? Obviously, okay, you include superhuman strength and durability as one, that knocks the number down a bit. And also, if you count... See, this is listed on this particular one, which, by the way, I'm going to have the link down in the description for this list that I'm reading from. If you count the supposed rubber mimicry as the same as the regular mimicry, then I could see how you would arrive at 17 powers. And I think that's kind of the assumed way of how they break it down. But bigger question, how does Mr. Incredible know of Jack Jack's 17 powers if the metal form is supposed to be one of them? Because he did not see that. I don't think he even saw the mimicry part, unless you counted the part where Jack Jack was mimicking Edna's mannerisms and I guess the whole eye scan voice thing. So, for those of you who are wondering after watching Incredibles 2, what all of the 17, I'm going to air quote 17, of Jack Jack's powers were, there's the whole breakdown. Again, I'm going to give you the link to, I guess it's a wiki article that I found that breaks down all these powers, including the one that I just completely discredited. If you find evidence of that, please let me know. If you caught something else that was not listed here, and that potentially wasn't caught by, the 17 powers line, leave a comment with that as well. Anyway, so that's all I've got in terms of this whole thing. I can't think of anything else that isn't listed here. So, that's going to do it for this time around. Let me know if you have any other ideas for things I could break down, analyze, talk about, discuss. Just all the comments down below. Even if you have something completely different and unrelated that you want me to talk about, let me know. But also make sure to like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Spread the word on Jack Jack's powers. And also make sure to subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell to get updates whenever I post videos if you want to see more stuff from me. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter at MattConroyYT if you'd rather keep up with my stuff that way. Anytime I'm posting a video to YouTube, at least, I put links on those pages as well. Or if you're looking for some occasional in-between stuff that's not so directly in my videos, find me on Instagram. That'll be MattConroyYT1990 because, I don't know, Instagram was being weird and wouldn't let me just use the YT thing for some weird reason. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I've got. So I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully I will see you next time. Stay cool, people.